We're in the building, 747 right now. Jumped the gun a little bit right there.
Excited?
Yeah, I got a guest in the studio. It's exciting to be able to sit down and talk with. We see him on CNN just about every day.
Yep.
You know, and if I'm not mistaken, it's Dr.
No, not
No doctor?
I have a couple honorary doctorates, but I'm not one of these folks who claim to be a doctor based upon that, though.
Okay. All right.
Although, I appreciate it.
Roland Martin is in the studio with us, man. You see him all the time on CNN. We appreciate you taking a few minutes.
And
with us this
TV
morning,
One.
man.
And TV One.
TV One as well.
I was making it clear. TV One paid me for my commentaries before CNN did. So I always give the Black Network props. And folks always ask me, hey, when you get your own show on CNN, I said, well, first of all, TV One gave me my own show first.
Right.
So on every Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern.
So for the people that don't know, just briefly, just how did you start, you know, just your career to get to where you are at CNN?
Well, actually,
right
I went to a communications high school, so
Okay.
I've been doing this since I was 14.
Okay.
I went to Jackie Hayes High School, Magna School of Communications in Houston. And so, you know, I've worked daily newspapers, I've worked black newspapers, I've run 3 black newspapers, was news editor of Tom Jones' website, blackamericaweb.com, did Savoy magazine, so I've done all the different mediums, and really all of that. You know, it's so funny, folks come up to me, especially young folks, and they'll say, hey, you know, I want to do what you're doing on CNN. I said, yeah, but you can't ignore what I did before CNN.
Right.
I mean, all of that positions you for what you do now.
Right.
And so, because what often happens, man, is a lot of folks, they want to comment on news of the day, but they have no knowledge, they have no background, they have no experience, they have no relationship to what took place. And so when I'm on the air, when I'm referencing things that have taken place over the last 10, 20 years, I mean, many of those folks I've actually talked with. And so, so I'm speaking about experience in terms of covering a lot of these issues. So many people today just want to start, they figure they have a blog and they can just comment on other stuff, but they haven't covered anything.
We were just talking that off the air this morning, talking about the blog issue and how things are getting out there before they're actually documented.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me how a lot of folks just want to assume that they are already a journalist, but they don't want to put the work in. And so that's what is always just stunning. How people always ask me, you know, what is the most important thing that I should know if I want to be a journalist or want to do anything?
Right.
And I tell them work ethic. You know, when I was at the inauguration, Radio 1 did a big deal for Tom Joyner and Kathy Hughes, and I stood up and I said, y'all can talk about all these tributes you want to about Tom Joyner. I said, but if you don't talk about work ethic, everything else doesn't matter.
Right.
Because if you don't work hard to do what you do, you can't get to a certain place.
Right.
And it's amazing how many people totally blow off work ethic.
Yeah. I don't think people do understand.
No, they don't realize. I mean, look. So when I was in college, look, I remember Alpha Phi Alpha, and there were times when I wouldn't do road trips to go with fraternity brothers because I had something else to do journalism-wise. There were other things that I had passed up, and so you have to put the time in. People don't realize what happens. They'll say, "Oh, hey, yeah, I hear you on the radio show," and so they figure you roll in at 5:59. Go on the air at 6 and walk out the door at 9:01. Not realizing prep time the night before, the week before, what you're doing to refine yourself, what you're doing after. I mean, it is work ethic.
Absolutely.
And just too many people don't appreciate work ethic in no matter what the job is.
You're here in town because you spoke last night for students and other people as well.
Right.
Winston-Salem State University and Wake Forest University. But it was on the campus of Winston-Salem State University.
Right.
The timing was the King holiday.
Yep. First of all, this is the 25th anniversary of the national holiday.
Okay.
It was signed, of course, by President Ronald Reagan. So there were various states that had state holidays, but this is the 25th anniversary of the national MLK holiday.
Okay. And what was the theme last night? Was that the theme?
Well, first of all, I mean, the overall theme for the student body, it dealt with the issue of social justice. But I spoke on the subject of just where you are. And really what that was about is I have a problem when people talk about what needs to happen in this country, and you have people who might be here in Greensboro, who might be in Winston-Salem, who might be in Charlotte, and they are talking about, well, what's going on in Oakland and Chicago and New York and D.C., and I'm saying, okay, but how can you ignore where you are?
Right.
And that is a fundamental problem. If you look at if you look at any movement in the history of the world, it started locally. It started just where people were. It started in somebody's living room. I told the story last night of the MLK Memorial that will be unveiled August 28th of this year. that started at a kitchen table of an alpha who was talking to his wife, and he said, you know, it sure would be nice if we had a national memorial for Dr. King on the Mall on Washington. That's how it started.
Right.
So here we are 20 plus years later, and you have this $120 million project being built, but it's starting at a kitchen table.
Right.
And so that's the thing that people overlook. And I said, you have to be a difference maker just where you are. But also, you cannot sit here and expect the baton to be passed to you. I mean, it angers me when I hear this generation talk about, well, I wish the older folks would just get out of the way, just let us do what we do, and stop being on the scene. And I'm going, no, you need to step up. Andrew Young and I talked about this on Saturday night. He said the older generation did not like Dr. King, did not like what they were doing, and so they were bothered by these young folks. See, we act like Dr. King was 60 years old.
Right.
He died at 39.
Right.
He got involved in Montgomery at 25.
Right.
And he was one of the older people.
Right.
Okay, Andrew Young was 22, was called an old head. You know, John Lewis was 17, Ella Baker. You look at with Snick, you look at Stokely Carmichael, Reverend Jackson. All those folks were 17, 18, 19 years old, traveling around the country, making a difference. The Freedom Riders. When you look at the sit-ins that took place, first of all, Ron Walters in Wichita, Kansas in July 1958. The first recognized Lunch County sit-in was a high school student. 1959 lunch counter sit-in in Oklahoma City. In 1960, you had the lunch counter sit-in North Carolina A&T. A week later here in Winston-Salem. Those folks were college students.
Right.
But they didn't ask anybody's permission to be a leader. They stepped up and said, we see a problem, let's get involved. And so, telling folks, stop waiting for somebody to anoint you and to hand you something. Say, no, you need to take it and accept some responsibility and go from there.
Again, Roland Martin hanging out with us on the Wild Out Wake Up Show here on 102 Jams this morning. I wanted to ask you quickly, because this is kind of recent, the whole Arizona shooting, and everybody's talking about the climate in Washington changing since it happened.
Sure.
You got the video of Sarah Palin trying to disassociate some of the rhetoric and some of the images that they put up there from the incident that happened. Right. Just briefly, could you give us your take on that?
There's no correlation between the political rhetoric and the shooting in Arizona. But I do believe that we should use the opportunity of the shooting to confront the political climate. We can have vigorous debate on an issue, but there's no need to attack somebody, to denigrate them, denigrate their family. When you have these idiots saying, oh, the president is a socialist and a fascist, and oh my God, he's destroying the country. I mean, that's stupid.
Right.
I mean, that's simply idiotic. And so we can have passion, we can have energy. But when you do have people who are saying, if we don't get our way, let's advocate our Second Amendment rights. I mean, you talk about bringing guns. There's no need to bring an AK-47 to a rally.
Right.
I don't care if you say you have the right to do it.
Right.
There's no reason for you to actually do it. And so we should use the opportunity to say, no, we can dial this stuff down. We can have legitimate discourse and conversation. And it sort of reminds me of this whole nonsense when you have rappers going back and forth, the whole deal in the 90s with the East Coast and West Coast. It's like, guys, time out.
Yeah.
Y'all tripping on what part of the country you're from. And so what happened? In that case, you know, all of this east-west back and forth, what happened? You ended up having two folks shot and killed. You had other folks who were beaten, who got into fights over what? Over folks beefing. It's the exact same thing. And it makes no sense whatsoever. You shouldn't have people going to a healthcare town hall rally pushing and shoving and going after a member of Congress and jumping in somebody's face and wagging their finger just because you disagree with the healthcare bill. That makes no sense to me.
Right.
So people should be responsible. You know, we have a responsibility, those of us on radio, on television, those of us who write, to understand that people do listen to what we have to say. There's a responsibility that comes with that, and so I think it is valuable for us to certainly change that tone. And so I wrote a piece on my website, rolandsmartin.com, where I said that every time that comes up, somebody should be reminded to say, remember Representative Giffords. Remember the Tucson 6 when you start acting a fool with a lot of this rhetoric.
I know we don't have a lot of time with you, so I'd like to ask you, I guess this last question. I want to see how you would rate President Obama, you know, this far into his term. Positive, what are you 2 years in? A positive and a negative.
Well, I think that, I mean, clearly he has passed some critical legislation and came in a difficult situation, difficult economic climate. And so some tough choices had to be made. one of the reasons why I say a C and folks get all mad is because he's at the midterm of his election.
Okay.
See, I don't believe, first of all, I grade on a hard curve because there's an expectation that is there. And so there certainly are more things that they can be doing when it comes to various issues. I would hope next week at the State of the Union address that for the first time we're going to hear the president at the State of the Union, while the nation is watching, actually talk about the poor in this country. You can't talk about MLK on yesterday when he died advocating for the poor, talking about the Poor People's Campaign. All of a sudden, when you hear us talk about, it's always the middle class, the middle class, the middle class, which really you're saying, I'm going after these independent voters in the middle class, but no. Will you see the president advocate and speak forcefully about the condition of the poor in this country? Okay. And so I say that, so again, he has more than he can do. He certainly has an opportunity to do more. But when you look at healthcare, we look at financial services, when you look at the student aid bill, a lot has been done. But again, there's more to do, and people say, well, we have high expectations. You should have high expectations for a president. Right. I don't understand the sense of low expectations that people have. And so there should be high expectations. And I'll say this to African Americans. We cannot sit here and be silent just because there's a black president. Right. Our issues have not changed. Right. The person sitting in the Oval Office looks like us. That is what has changed. And so our voices cannot be silent. Students who stood out there and in the rain and galvanized people to vote for President Obama, they should not go away. They should be saying, look, we have demands as well, and we want you to do more for us. I believe that when you give somebody your vote, there's an expectation for a return on that investment. Right. And so the election was not the end of a process, it was the beginning of a process. And so I want to see young folks galvanized and making it clear what they want. Republicans want to repeal health care. But now you have people who are now on their parents' health insurance up until the age of 25. Right. Are young people going to use their voices and say, no, how dare you try to repeal that? Right. Because that is helpful for us. Right. And so again, he's done a good job. There's more that can be done, but we cannot be silent in making it clear what we want in terms of our agenda. Because again, it is a return on the investment. 95% of black folks voted for the president, and I expect something in return for that investment.
Absolutely. All right. Mr. Roland Martin in the studio on the Wild Out Wake Up Show. Awesome. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be able to have you in here.
Thanks so much.
Of course, we'll see you on the TV probably later on today.
I will be on TV tonight. Flying to DC in 2 hours.
I was nervous, man, because I didn't think I was prepared. I thought I was going to need a shovel to talk to you, but that wasn't deep at all. I understood all of that.
It wasn't deep because you land on the surface.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again. Roland Martin in the studio with the Wild Out.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Hey, ladies, it's time to stop.